Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hedgehog Business Podcast. Today, I have a very interesting guest, Aidan, who is the co-founder of VEITA. Right? Did I pronounce that correctly? I always feel like
VEITA.
I pronounce the words not
It's
the
all
right
good.
way.
It happens pretty often, honestly. So
VEITA, right?
yeah,
And VEITA is a technology startup, which I was very excited to talk to you about that because myself and Patrick, our new co-host, we have a background in the SaaS technology space, and it's a very competitive landscape. Not for the faint of heart. A lot of pivots, a lot of changes, and a lot of moving pieces. So, Aidan, my first question to you is: how are you managing all of that at such an early stage?
yeah. Well, I guess I'm probably blessed to have this not be my first rodeo in a sense,
Mm,
right? I mean, I wouldn't say I've had any massive SaaS success in the past, but I have had many years of working on ideas and going to market and trying things out. So yeah, I think there's definitely I've got a nice background in exploring these ideas and understanding the strategy behind how to go to market with these kinds of products and how to see opportunities and adjust when you see those opportunities. So yeah, that's really been, I guess, at the heart of the way that we've been pushing forward.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about Vita, though. Well, it's a software company. I think it's very unique what you guys are doing. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, VEITA, we're basically creating an ecosystem to enable AI for HR applications in small, medium enterprises and also in large enterprises, where we've actually been doing quite a bit of work over the last little bit. So really the concept behind it is just on a base level, AI models are obviously great. There's the ChatGPT is pretty much unanimous at this point. Everyone's using it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about the talent of human beings, right, and sort of knowledge in general and specialization, um, it's usually a T-shape for a lot of people, right? You have a sort of a thin layer of very broad knowledge on a lot of different stuff, and then you have a real deep domain knowledge in a given subject area, right? Um, you know, so pretty consistent across most people, most job capabilities, most skill sets, and I strongly believe AI is no different. You've got certain models that are going to be very good, like GPT-4 and GPT-5, whenever that comes out, and Claude or Llama or whoever else. That's going to be very good at the broad set of knowledge, and then really the key is going to be nailing down that super deep expertise in a given subject area. Um, so yeah, our goal is basically to pursue the HR domain for that subject area, to give LLMs the the largest possible knowledge base and the largest possible experience using a whole bunch of different techniques, obviously, within the HR domain. Um, and I think there's a lot of stuff that comes with that, right? There's, you know, probably people are pretty familiar with a lot of the different ways that you can specialize LLMs on a given topic, right? You've got RAG, you've got parametric fine tuning. Um, and I think there's a lot of things that come with that. But one of the things that we like to focus on from the ecosystem play perspective is bringing in all sorts of knowledge that is not publicly available that the LLMs have not been trained on. So really specialized knowledge in the HR domain. We call them, marketplace partners. You can think of it as an app store on the platform for specialized HR knowledge, but really, it's being able to take stuff that LLMs aren't allowed to be trained on when you're using an open source corpus of text to build an LLM, and providing that knowledge to get really deep subject matter expertise on HR.
So, I think whenever I think of HR and AI, my initial scope of vision is tied to the application process. Somebody comes in and I'm looking for keyword matches. It's I feel like a simple use case for it, but I think that's most people's familiarity whenever you think of how did AI match up with HR. And it seems like what you're looking to do is maybe not even tied to the application process at all, but tied to the general functions of HR and how they can, interact with employees, interact with, external knowledge sources, and kind of, enhance the employee experience. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, exactly. More and more, obviously, with remote work for a lot of companies, or at least a hybrid workplace, people aren't as connected to the job site, so you might not be as engaged with an HR team, or even just your general, peers. as you usually would be. But I think from a talent management and talent elevation perspective, you still want tools that can provide employees with, career suggestions, upskilling opportunities, mental health and physical health resources, easy ways to get information on what's covered under benefits and be able to schedule time off and understand their, the employee handbooks, all of that kind of stuff. We see building all of that into what we do in different modules, and trying to basically provide very high performance employee experience from an HR perspective.
Interesting. I had the privilege of speaking with a company that's kind of forming out of the DC area. What they're looking to do is things that you can be trained upon or certified on. How can I automate the interaction? It's starting actually with cybersecurity threats, red team, blue team activities is where they're really starting. But they're looking at creating these like almost virtual employees that can excel at whatever it is needed to be done by the initiative, whether it's dealing with Salesforce or some application that's very set in path as to what you can do and how to do the activities. Is that kind of similar to where you see VEITA impacting, is kind of expanding the physical employees to always be there for, the physical HR employees always be there for, their entire workforce?
Yeah, exactly. We see it as basically, our vision being every employee in every company is going to have their own personal HR assistant, right? And it's going to be someone that is dedicated to your performance, dedicated to your life, your job experience, and helping you out along the way, right? So, and so there's the really, low hanging fruit of just being able to, get information on stuff you need from HR when usually you'd have to send an email, and that's, basic stuff, obviously. Mm-hmm. Then there's sort of more what you're talking about, which is the e-learning aspects of, being able to learn about, certain procedures or processes, or, onboard into an organization and complete certain tasks while you're onboarding. And then even past that, there's coaching applications, right? Be able to coach you on how to approach upskilling, be able to coach you on how to integrate into your organization. And then within each of those domains, when we think about the ecosystem play and the partnerships here with sort of, we call them, marketplace partners or IP partners. Mm-hmm. Each of those domains have lots of companies that have spent years building up knowledge bases that are proprietary, right? So you've got, mm-hmm. for example, someone that we've been talking to is they do mental and physical health resources for companies. So it's a specific login that provides those kinds of resources, right? And integrating those into the platform. So now you've got 10, 20 years of collective, really high level mental and physical health advice for employees, right? And now all of that can be trained into this and accessed by the employees in a really seamless way. Mm-hmm. So that obviously elevates anything that we could bring to the table, elevates anything that you could find publicly online, and elevates anything that you could just ask GPT to create and construct for you. And then on the coaching side, we've been working with an organization that provides very high level executive coaching for leadership transitions and leadership development. And so with that use case, right, you've got this really, really high level, intensive, expensive coaching product, essentially, that large organizations, Fortune 500 companies, have been purchasing and providing to their leaders for transitions. But now you've got this whole way where you can integrate all of that information into our platform, provided as a module. And now your frontline management has the best in class leadership development and leadership transitions coaching available to them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a huge new opportunity to provide for these sort of older models of organizations that aren't necessarily technical organizations. They just have this real deep experience in a given domain. Huge monetization opportunity for them to be able to provide these kinds of tools and leverage platforms like ours to be able to do it in a really easy way and not have to worry about any of the technology behind it. And then it's a huge opportunity for these companies that are purchasing these products to be able to have this incredible domain experience at a fraction of the price and way more widespread and available to all your employees than it's ever been able to be, right? So, amazing stuff obviously happening.
Yeah, it's really cool.
In the domain.
I've even seen people talk about this. The same project was talking about applying personalities to these AI personas. So you can kind of have a dialogue with, it's not just answering questions and proceeding with proper coaching. It's also integrating personality placements towards the right employee based off of their preferences and who they like to interact with. And so it's the scope of this and application for it is really neat. It's kind of cool to see you on the forefront of this, driving some impact and some change. It's how did you find your way here? I know you talked about having some past experiences, but how did we get here?
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, I'm going to quickly comment on that last thing because I think there's something interesting we've been doing there too. And I think that's a really great use case, the whole personalization piece.
Right.
Another partner that we've been talking to, that we actually are signing on today, they provide employee psychometric well-being exams. So surveys for employees to be able to gauge their well-being and engagement in the workplace, which you can use that kind of stuff to predict job turnover and, a whole bunch of other, burnout, a whole bunch of other stuff. But, when you think about personalizing, I think there's probably a more meta statement in here about how you program AI to get the results you want, right? But when you think about personalization around AI for a specific, personality or approach or customization to an employee, you can prompt it in a way where you get a certain type of response for it, right? You can say you're a really bright and bubbly attitude HR person, super helpful. You go over the top to help your employees, right? You can go that route, but really where I see the opportunity is not just leveraging the basic AI tooling like that, but when you start to work in actual medically developed psychometric exams for personalization, like you could just customize an LLM and make them really nice and fit specific employees' personalities and whatever. Or you can use other ML techniques to build an entire psychometric profile for an employee and really give them the best possible experience for them, right? And then you can influence those kinds of prompting parameters around the results from that psychometric exam. So it's not necessarily this person likes a happier person, this person likes a more serious person. It's like, this is exactly how you need to treat this employee to get the most out of them and to assist them and to, elevate their career, right? So
every interaction is probably a little bit different of how you approach it from a coaching perspective, an upskilling perspective. It depends on what's happening, the context. I think Raf talks a lot about context in AI, and I feel like that's exactly what you're talking about here, is providing even additional, more context relevant to personality traits and needs of the situation.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I think the other point there is it's not just about the LLM and fine-tuning an LLM specifically, right? Like, there's a constant debate of what's better, RAG or fine-tuning. And realistically, it's probably a combination of both, right? But right now, everyone's really liking RAG, and you can get really great results out of that with some good prompting around that.
Right.
But I think the other thing is not everything is suited to be done entirely by AI, right? Like, if you're trying to do, like sentiment analysis is something that's pretty great for generative AI, but if you're trying to do some kind of classification task, right, and like you just want to run it through GPT, get it to give you, is this whatever, yes or no, and then give you the yes or no, and then you take that text and then you have something happening in your system based on that text. It might not be that that's the best tool for that. Like, there might be other ML techniques and ML models that are better for that kind of use case, that are going to be faster and cheaper and more effective at getting that job done. So yeah, I think that's sort of the more meta perspective behind that, is like, when you're working with something like a psychometric exam, that's a specifically developed ML tool for psychometric profiling of employees.
Mm-hmm.
Like GPT probably can't do a better job than that. It probably never will be able to do a better job than that, because it doesn't need to be complicated to that level where you need serious generative AI to achieve that task, right? Like, even if it can achieve that, it's going to be cheaper to do it in a different way. So I think, that's sort of the more meta perspective behind all that.
Right. And Aidan, let me pull that thread a little bit, because I'm fascinated by the idea that you mentioned of every employee essentially having their own HR, representative, helping them through their own career development based on, their makeup psychologically. But what is the effect that you think that plays in a company's culture? Because I feel that a lot of the things that make culture are some of our emotional attachments to it, right? The same with the mission and the vision of the organization. So having a system of AIs that are, are leveraging all of this information specifically for every single employee, I'm very curious what role you see that playing in terms of the culture and the values of the company.
Yeah. Well, one of our sort of taglines is we take away the manual work so you can focus more on your strategic and human tasks, right?
I see. Mm-hmm.
We don't want to remove the human piece from any of this. We don't think this will remove the human piece from any of this. In fact, one of the things you could build in is specific advice or specific triggers that require you to go and talk to a human if that's the optimal thing to do.
Yeah.
And optimal, meaning whatever it means, but it can be decided by the given enterprise, right? So
right.
These are things that can be tuned around, especially large enterprises where there's a lot of data and a lot of employees, a lot of questions, a lot of interactions.
Yeah.
You can really tune this specific to whichever organization and their specific culture and their history and their way of operating. And so that's really, I don't ever really see AI as something that gets rid of human interaction, right? It may get rid of some / automate some human jobs. Like for sure that might be a future here. Although I still think that there's a huge use case and likely a long-term use case of AI assisting people in their jobs and not taking them.
Right.
And really we like to focus there too. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, our world and our economy still revolves around humans, right? You're still moving at the pace that humans can move and can buy things and can live their daily lives. So at a certain point, it does need to be tailored to a human experience. And we've built AI in the image of our own, neurons, right? So I think continuing to develop AI as something that's human centric and that reflects the human experience is absolutely important.
Yeah, it's just a lot of that consistency of interaction, like following a process to be able to automate a process of paperwork signing or things like that just require, sometimes you're just dealing with HR, people, resources, generalists, and it sometimes takes a little while to get some feedback on a very simple thing that could be done in an instant. And so being able to eliminate that redundancy of tasks and focus on the human interaction, I think, is the beautiful piece here, which is the important piece of this is the human of the resources, right? And so the more that you can focus on that component of it and get rid of, some of the nuance, the basic nuances of that role, which take up time. It's like that 1/5 rule. Can I reduce my time to 1/5? If I can, this is a perfect opportunity to replace that. And I feel like that's exactly what you're doing here.
No, exactly. And I think if you ask any founder or any CEO of any company, if you say, if I can save your employees over here 50% of their time or 70% of their time, will there be other things for them to do? Everyone's going to have some other stuff for people to do. Like there's not, no company is running at it. No company just has a Trello board with zero backlog and, no idea what they want to get done, right? There's tasks infinitely available. So, again, we focus on trying to enable people where they can spend all of their time doing their strategic and human focused tasks in HR, right? Yeah. There's a lot of strategic stuff to get done. There's a lot of thinking around how to approach hiring and how to approach benefits and how to restructure benefits agreements and union agreements. And there's all sorts of really strategic tasks that need to happen. And focusing more on those will yield better outcomes for the organization. So,
yeah. Aidan, and I kind of want to bring it back to Patrick's earlier question, which is like the conception of this idea. Where did that come from?
Yeah. So I guess, maybe a year and a half ago, our business was mainly focused on software development projects. So focused on blockchain and AI software development. And so we were just sort of, doing contracts here and there and building stuff. Obviously, we're, very close to the state of AI, just given what we were doing and understanding how it's evolving, using Midjourney before DALL-E was out, for example, pretty like the good old days before GPT existed. Right. And, which I know isn't really the good old days in the grand scheme of AI, but we basically started to do some software development contracts around AI and we had a ton of different brainstorming sessions as this was evolving and coming out and becoming sort of something that we saw very clearly as an enabler for B2B efficiency.
Yeah.
And some of our board members have experience in HR. And so we played around with a lot of the use cases there. And as we were building stuff, we were getting learnings from building these platforms for other people. And yeah, we saw the opportunity, and we had a bunch of conversations around the feasibility and exploring the business model, of course. And we thought it was a really great opportunity. So we took it.
Awesome. But
Wow.
but I want to go back a little bit further. How did you get to doing custom software?
Yeah. So custom software, I guess I can go back even further and just say how I got into entrepreneurship probably. And that'll make a little bit more sense. Yeah.
That's where we want to go. That's where we want to go.
Yeah. So let me think. So I guess I've been interested in entrepreneurship probably since I was 10 or 11. I remember coming up with ideas for sunglass brand companies. I wanted to make some wooden sunglasses at one point, which I know ended up being a thing. I had a idea for some, like light up logos on the outside of sunglasses and whatever, and just drew sketches in my notebook and whatever. Kind of cool, cool little ideas when you're younger. And my parents were actually entrepreneurs, so they started their own company. And so it was always sort of something that I wanted to do, and I saw the value of being able to, dictate your own destiny, really. I of course saw that they were working more than any other parent was, right? Which is fair, but that didn't really. That still appeals to me. I like working, and to me, it's just the flow of ideas is amazing, and being able to conceptualize and then implement an idea in real time is incredible, right? So, that's an experience I don't really get anywhere else. So that always appealed to me. I had some really great experiences. I grew up in Boston, so I did the Harvard Summer Student Business Academy, I think it's called, one of the summers, and you do some product development stuff, come up with an idea, create a go-to-market strategy, and pitch it to a panel of people, whatever. So I had some exposure through that to other people who were throwing around ideas and, thinking of startup ideas at, I think it was probably 16 or 15 years old at that time. And did business classes in my high school. I was really lucky to go to a public high school in Massachusetts that has incredible resources and incredible classes. So it's really I think it's one of the best public schools in the US. So we had awesome entrepreneurship classes and business classes and lots of outlets for creativity. And then after that, I did my first year in university. I spent some time around I went to Western University in London, Ontario. Mm-hmm. So they have this program called Propel, and it's basically like I don't know, it's not really a club. It's more like an incubator for startups, but it's they provide mentorship and advice and events and networking events and all this kind of stuff. So I was always spending time around there. Fast forward to the summer after my first year, I did an internship at a 3PL in Boston. So like a logistics company, third-party logistics company. And I originally was just doing data entry stuff. It was my first internship, like when you're at your first real job and you're eager to do this kind of stuff, you're like, data entry
don't do anything
great.
At that point.
Like data entry sounds awesome. I'll crush that. Right. And so my goal was just to kind of absolutely crush it and impress them and just get more and more responsibilities as the summer went on. And that's what ended up happening. I would finish stuff that was supposed to take 5 days and 2 days. And then I'm like, all right, what can I do next? And they're like, oh, well, you can check this out or explore this or whatever. And it basically, I ended up, what turned into my major project for that summer was implementing ELD technology into trucks. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with logistics, but there was an ELD mandate that went into place, I think in 2018 maybe, or 2019, somewhere in there. So basically they were starting to implement their ELDs, and so they basically said, figure out how to install these, work with the drivers. They had a very specific way that they recorded driver time. They were very meticulous about when a driver arrives or leaves, they note the time, and when they drop their trailer, they note the time. So they also wanted to build this kind of an integration in where not just using the ELD for hours of service stuff, which is basically for those that don't know, hours of service, there's a limit per day and also per week that a driver can drive a truck for. So they wanted to use it for that, but they also wanted to use it for this kind of location tracking where they could track when someone was dropping a trailer or leaving an area, whatever. Right. So I ended up installing all of those ELDs for them, figuring out the software, putting together sort of an admin user guide for how to use the software for everyone, training everyone on it, training the drivers on it, and then figuring out a data analysis pipeline for extracting that kind of data from it for them, so that they could actually know when people were leaving and arriving.
Right.
And I think they still use that process today. I keep in touch with them, obviously, and I guess it's been 8 years now, 7 years, and they're still doing that. So, but crazy experience, and obviously amazing for an 18-year-old to be able to, or 19-year-old to be able to do that kind of work, and truly blessed to have earned their trust like that, and that I had such great boss. Jude was my boss at the time. He's this awesome guy, greatest guy ever, hilarious. But
shout out Jude. Shout out Jude.
Yeah, shout out Jude. Yeah, exactly. Jude's the man. But yeah, it was a really incredible experience. So from there, I basically had all this trucking experience, and I wanted to get into something trucking related. So I started to look at different opportunities there. I originally was doing some consulting for ELD implementation. So I was, analyzing all, I think 73 ELDs on the market at the time, figuring out their.
And just so everyone knows, I feel like ELDs, electronic logging devices, like GPS,
right,
is essentially what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a specialty GPS hardware / software tool,
right,
for tracking drivers' hours of service. Yeah. I didn't realize this conversation was going to go trucking, but I'm down. This is awesome.
We never know where they're going to end up.
Yeah, I actually I helped launch a company in the supply chain space, but I was specifically dealing with reusable assets. So working with tier 1, tier 2 automotive manufacturers, tracking anything that moves. So it could be inside the warehouse or externally. But, it'd be surprising. Some of these people are shipping parts, a tier 1 may ship parts to Ford or Fiat Chrysler, and they have these big steel racks that cost like $1,000 a piece. And so if they're missing 10,000 of them, that's no chump change. And people
you're on the warehouse management side, kind of, or? So
we did some warehouse management, but a lot of it was reusable package tracking. So it could be plastic bins, big totes, bread trays, limited contracts with people like Walmart and Orbis. I'm sure you're familiar with them. But just anyone moving product that package wasn't a one-time shipper. It had to come back. And so we leveraged RFID was our main suite of products. So portals at the door, tags on the assets, pretty cheap. But I did some projects for diversion, which I'm sure you probably worked with the trucking space in the CPG world, where I was trying to leverage different components inside of it, different sensors, to send pings on when a product was leaving a place and going someplace else that wasn't supposed to be on the truck. Because a lot of those GPS pucks, if they tried to hide them inside packaging, truckers would be able to pull those out and throw them away because they were so big. So they could get away with diverting product. But they were the funnest projects. They're fun to problem solve with. But I found I'm in Cleveland, Mississippi, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing in Cleveland, Mississippi at this warehouse trying to track products? I just didn't want to live that life. So I tried a different project, just because I didn't see an end in sight. I was like, I'm going to be in terrible motels around these big warehouses or manufacturing plants. And as fun as the puzzles were to solve, I was good. I had solved enough, on to the next.
Yeah, no, totally. That's hilarious. Well, yeah, I feel like everyone's got to have some good supply chain experience just to kind of understand the world a little bit better. I think it's a valuable thing to get either way. And yeah, like you said, you see pockets of the world and types of people, and it's really interesting. It kind of just shows you the world a little bit, so it's interesting.
What's happening on the back end of society almost, right?
Yeah, well, I think it just gives you an appreciation for how things actually end up at your door. A lot of people just press order and don't know what happens, or they go and buy a car and they don't understand how it got there, right? Our economy is incredible, and what we've created, all these supply chains are absolutely incredible. The fact that it's global, and something gets mined somewhere and then refined somewhere else, and then turned into a product somewhere else, and then turned into another product with combined parts somewhere else. That whole chain of stuff is just incredible, and gives you a true appreciation for, I guess, the scale of everything and how incredible that is, but also, it gives you appreciation for, I guess, the diversity and business opportunities. There's so many different ways to make money, and so many different niches, and so many different little companies doing small stuff and making a ton of money doing it. So I think that was a really big takeaway for me too.
Yeah, very true. Very true. It's cool stuff. And just seeing all the robots in these warehouses and how big they are. And I never knew how big tools could be. 3-ton tools to make a little plastic component. So these injection molding machines. I'm like, it just blew my mind. It was cool stuff.
Yeah, it's wild. I haven't done I got to do a check-in for supply chain world and see how, I know there's a lot of AI effort going on there. I think there's actually an investment fund in Toronto that's specific to supply AI for supply chain. But I don't know. I've always kind of assumed machine learning is a better application for that. Those kinds of problems, and generative AI might not be the thing, but I'm sure there's tons of stuff. Even if you think about, like, my actual first SaaS product was basically a load board for Canada, right? So it was to connect shippers and trucking companies, or I guess my approach was specifically freight brokers and trucking companies, or freight forwarders, either or. So that was kind of that was my effort. And I that whole process was always amazing, because that's something that even to this day is like extremely manual and very relationship based, right? Shippers have their preferred trucking companies, and they'll call up the guy and say, can you do this on this day? And I'm sure there's been some efficiencies gained since I was doing it like 7 years ago or whatever. There's probably some improvements, but I remember Uber Freight was coming out at the time when I was working on this. And even that, I think, are they even still around? I know they're still around in some capacity, but I remember there was all sorts of, I know the business model wasn't working great for them at the time.
Right.
And it's just because all these owner operators and smaller trucking companies were just so used to doing things the way that they were used to doing things. They didn't want to just, offload all of that onto this platform. They had their relationships, right? Like they were good. They had their lanes that were consistent that they would do every week. And so that's how my whole vision behind the load board at the time, I didn't really call it a load board, but the vision was basically to create, at some point, a network, but sort of shorter term, to create private load boards for each freight broker and freight forwarder, so that they could manage their relationships on one platform and be able to push out loads to a trusted set of carriers, where those carriers could basically book consistent lanes with them.
Right.
So automate that process a little bit of the phone calling, which, I'm sure there's tons of software that's tried to solve that problem. And I know I would be shocked if people weren't still calling each other and booking loads, right? So.
A mentor told me once is like, your biggest competitor in life is apathy. Just people don't want to change. And it's so true.
That's a great quote.
And if they don't have, and if it's not killing them, right, and it doesn't really impact revenue too much, people are just like, well, it is what it is. It is part of the job. But it's interesting. It's cool. It's you never know, like, these weird parallels you're going to have with people as a quick conversation explodes. The next thing you know, it's like, holy crap, we have all this stuff that we've been so tertiary around without knowing each other, which is pretty cool.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's amazing. I guess to bring it back to AI a little bit, that whole perspective on people are content doing things the way they are. Like, we work a lot with enterprises, right? Like, our main goal, our main industry is really healthcare, right? So hospitals and really large healthcare organizations, they tend to have very complex HR environments, and there's unions involved and all sorts of stuff. And obviously, like, the 24/7 operation part of it is pretty key, because HR is only operating from 9 to 5, but the nursing staff or doctors is 24/7. There's all sorts of specific challenges with healthcare, but from a change management perspective with AI in general, right? Like, this is a whole new way of people approaching their daily lives and their daily jobs. They're going in and doing things in a completely different way. From the moment they sit down, they're loading up different stuff. Their procedures and daily processes are looking completely different. And there's a really big change management aspect to that. You really have to, it's not just about, hey, here's this thing, it's going to help you, go ahead and use it, right? Like, people need to understand why it's important to them. There needs to be support from mid-level management on, this is why this is important to us as an organization. This is why you have to be consistent on keeping your employees using this and track KPIs and make sure that they're involved. This is the messaging for, how to tell employees that this isn't going to ruin their job and keep them encouraged and excited about this. It's a whole organizational change, really, especially at enterprise level. So I think that's something that probably a lot of companies still are underestimating in the AI space, is the whole aspect of, build it and they will come. Definitely doesn't exist anymore.
Just in a movie.
Build it and sell it pretty much doesn't even exist anymore. Now it's like, build it, sell it, and make sure it works, and make sure that they're engaged and make sure they're using it. Like, that's really what you have to be doing. So
what have you found has been your lowest hanging fruit to get employee buy-in for these managers trying to implement a new process around AI? Where do you see people feeling excited about leveraging it versus feeling like, oh, another new thing I got to do?
Yeah, well, a real key for us has become what we call our power users. So involving a small subset of people within a given department on the onboarding, and then teaching them how to teach other people how to use it. But, making sure that they know that they're really on the forefront of this, and that they're really going to be the ones helping us determine our product roadmap as we go, to make sure this continues to fit with them, and that they're really innovators at their company for this, right? Mm-hmm. Like, everyone wants to obviously be involved in a special project and be, on the forefront of technology. And maybe not everyone, some people do. We have a few people that are power users that are technology averse, which I love. To me, that's the best thing ever. But because then it's like, if we can win them over, then we've got it, right? So
they're power users are trying to find a gotcha moment. They're like,
exactly,
gotcha.
Yeah. So that's perfect. I mean, that's the best. I love that. But yeah, just making sure that they feel involved, that they understand that we're building stuff for them, we're solving their problems. You've really got to move quick, right? Like, if someone has a problem today, it's got to be solved by tomorrow. It's like, it's just got to be like that. You got to give them a heads up when it's solved. You got to tell them how you solved it. Now that given use case is not going to bug them anymore, and that it'll work perfectly. Like, really, that's what it's all about, is staying on it and really working closely with them. And I think that's one of the benefits of the stage we're at, is we have clients, but we're not at the size where we can't be really tailored to given companies. Like, we've really specifically been doing pilots with large enterprises that we want to make sure we're tailoring everything to, and that we're working with them to improve our products and being able to make them as great as possible. Because then once you hit the gas pedal on the sales process, you don't need to worry about doing that for every single person, because no one has I guess maybe not no one, but no startup has the customer support team to manage 10,000 person companies and solve all of their needs and make sure it's working perfectly for every single one of them and fitting all of their use cases, right? Like, to create these initial broad specific use cases, it's almost like where the experience from software development contracts comes in, right? Like, you got to figure out what the problems are, figure out what the solutions need to be, and work with them to deploy those solutions gradually as you go. So it's a great mode to be in. And I think, Rafael, to your previous point about pivots, right? That's where you see opportunities to pivot too, is when you're working really closely with people and understanding the challenges, understanding their problems, building them solutions. And, everything we're building is aligned with our vision right now. But for example, one of our, I guess, the current pathways are, do we go with HR in general, which we have a lot of opportunities there. We're talking with lots of HR consultancies on distribution to their clients, and we've signed one of them, and we have 3-4 more in the pipeline there. And so then that brings you this whole network of small and medium enterprises that you can deliver this kind of technology to, and it makes it easier for them because they don't necessarily have an HR staff yet. Mm-hmm. So this enables them to actually have a real personal HR staff. And there's loads of opportunities on just going broad with HR, right? But then we were implemented at one of the largest, I think it's like a top 25 global hospital here in Toronto. So, and we're having conversations with some of the largest healthcare providers in the US right now. So there's an opportunity there for just going the healthcare route. And we've already been pulled at this hospital into some other departments to help solve some other use cases. So it's already there's opportunities outside of HR to still assist hospitals and assist other departments and continue to spread, right? So it's sort of this crossroads, and it's not conflicting now because all of it is still aligned with our product roadmap and everything that we're building for each of these use cases. And as we deploy them in onboard power users and experiment, it's all aligned with our goals and it's all scalable for us. So that's great. But there may come a time where it's no longer possible to just do both of those routes, and we're going to have to pick one or the other. And you could call that a pivot, right? I mean, if we decide we're the healthcare company specifically, and that it's not limited to HR, that would be a pivot from the HR current focus. But where we are now, I would say it's AI for healthcare HR is really the core focus of us right now.
How did you guys end up specifically in healthcare?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm trying to remember even how that happened, but I mean, we knew it was a more complex HR environment, right? I think I mentioned that earlier, but when it comes to I think the hospital that I mentioned earlier I know there's lots of union agreements. There's, I think, A to Z in terms of benefits packages, and there's different policies and procedures for different full-time / part-time employees. And like, there's all sorts of different nuances there. And so I think it was Sam Altman actually that said, solve hard problems because, or work on hard problems because no one else wants to work on them. And usually there's a payout when you solve them.
Right.
So we saw that as a really difficult problem in a really challenging environment and somewhere where we could provide a lot of value. And yeah, I mean, and here in Ontario, are you guys located in Ontario, by the way? I can't remember. I thought you guys were.
No, we're like DC, Virginia area.
DC, Virginia. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, it's pretty unanimous across, I'd say, North America. But in Toronto, there's been a nursing shortage. So, there's all sorts of issues with onboarding nurses and then being able to provide fast care to patients. So we see this as something that could really help assist with that. It's a real pressure point for hospitals right now. Be able to onboard nurses quickly, be able to get them up to speed on your current policies and procedures and trained up on all of the right stuff. And even in the U.S., in the U.S., hospitals are hiring a lot of, I guess what's it called? Travel nurses. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought there was another word for that, but yeah, travel nurses. And even if you're going to be cycling nurses out in and out every month or 6 months or whatever, those people have to be trained quickly. They have to be onboarded quickly. They have to be aligned with your organization very quickly. And that's a huge pain point for the U.S. hospitals as well, right? So the HR problem is definitely a big one in the healthcare space, and we sort of saw that as a real great entry point. Our first step was doing this pilot with this hospital in Canada and their HR team, and that went great. And so now we've deployed across their HR team and still working obviously very closely on product development with them. But then also got pulled into another department and potentially two more now that we're talking to. So it's like, you sort of just get pulled in different directions. And yeah, like I said, we have the time for it now and it's all aligned with our roadmap. So it's great. There may come a time where we have to choose, but we're talking with, I think I mentioned it, but a bunch of the largest health networks in the US right now. So obviously if those pilots go through or if co-development happens or investment from their venture arms happens, then that decides our fate, right? Yeah,
really cool.
Pretty much, yeah.
Aidan, so one of the things that I find so was complicated but fun in terms of the enterprise level is the complexity of the deals, right? Because you have multiple stakeholders and the process take a lot longer. So maybe it would help a lot, I think, for listeners that are either in the enterprise space now or wanting to get into the enterprise space. How was that initial conversation for you to get yourself in the door? Obviously, a startup company, obviously healthcare, so you have to have a lot of trust. How did you manage to build those relationships to the point that they said, okay, we'll go ahead and take a risk or calculated risk, I guess, in that case with you?
Yeah, well, I think it's honestly more of a matter of team building than anything else, because I'm blessed to have, my co-founders are I think all of them are around double my age and have been in the industry for a really long time. One of them is easily the best account executive, sales executive I've ever worked with in my life, right? So, he could walk into the president's office and convince him to give us all of America, right? So he's a super talented guy, and he got us in the door at this hospital and opened up that opportunity for us. And then I have, along with him, other team members who have a lot of experience in enterprise sales. So they've helped me put together these contracts and develop these relationships and figure out the onboarding procedures and all that. And I think, honestly, I think the lesson there to me is network always, build relationships with people of all ages, because I'm, blessed to have relationships with people that are that old and that exexperienced and have, sorry, not that old. Sorry, guys, if you're watching this podcast. You guys look great. You guys are looking great. But but no, I mean, blessed to have those relationships and that experience behind me. So, but it starts with one, and then they pull in people, and you talk to those people, and you get people interested. It's really a balancing act. You have to keep your momentum going on all fronts, right? You got to make progress on sales. You got to make progress on product and development. And then that way, when you're checking in with people and you check back in with them, you made all this progress. Now they're excited about what you're doing and they want to be a part of it. And, it's really this wheel that's got to keep turning. And as the founder, you really just have to be pushing that thing down the hill or up the hill, I guess, more accurately. But yeah, and bringing in people with experience is critical. I think early on with the logistics the logistics SaaS platform, I made the mistake of, this is going to be completely counter to a lot of the advice that people get, but I made the mistake of being too frugal with equity. I was really unwilling to give it away pretty much. Like I remember even someone who was a mentor of mine and was going to be helping introduce me to people and getting me in the doors of a whole bunch of different logistics providers wanted, I don't even remember, like maybe 10% equity or something. And I was like, I won't do more than 2. And it just didn't go through because of that. And, maybe 10% was a lot. Like it's for your given situation, but 10% for someone that can come in and get you the sales you need to make your entire company is worth it. Right. Like it's, you have to be careful with this kind of thing, but it's not just black or white. Don't give anyone equity, defend it, give people other kinds of deals, try to get people on some kind of, referral fees or whatever. Like, yeah, people can do that, but people aren't going to be as engaged if you're getting them on those kinds of deals. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think everyone talks about don't ever give away equity as your most valuable asset. And that's true, but you have to sometimes give away equity. It's not like, it's not like never do it. You're going to end up screwing yourself because you're not going to get the opportunities you need to grow.
So speaking of equity and kind of how you've pivoted from working in the freight space to now getting into healthcare, are you more of a technical founder? Are you like more on the product side? Are you actually writing the code yourself, or where does that go into it for you? Before I get into my question, I was wondering. It seems like you're bringing a lot of BD people, but you're also kind of on that front too. So I'm like curious as to what role you usually play.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of play all roles for the most part. I do code in Python. I've done. I actually just finished a year-long AI machine learning class, postgraduate program at University of Texas.
Nice.
So it's a real intensive Python, super technical AI machine learning course, and I have that background with the logistics startup and with other efforts in software development. I've always been sort of product manager role, so really focused on product and working very closely with development teams. And but then also at the same time, I manage all the marketing stuff and I manage all the sales pipeline stuff and helping build the strategies for that. And then manage investor conversations and board meetings. And I pretty much, I would say at the moment wear the most shoes possible.
Right.
So,
right.
I have a pretty wide breadth of experience in a lot of different domains, but I would say product is probably where I have the most experience just because I have that technical knowledge. Right. I've done it a few times, plus all the software development work, helping scope things out and figure out the architecture for stuff and then break it down into tasks. And, all of that kind of stuff has been tailored me to be a very good product founder. But one of my mentors once said, I love this quote, and our lead dev brings it up all the time because I said it to him, but he said first-time founders focus on product and second-time founders focus on sales. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not his quote, but it's a great quote. It's stuck with me a lot. And it's true, So to me, bringing in people who are great at the business development side, I can do it. But given how much is going on, there's so much for me to do that I can't really be on it in the way I'd like to be with cold calling and facilitating those relationships and all of that. So you have to have those other people in there who can help you with that.
Right. So, and then tying it back into kind of where you were the first time to where you are now, thinking about equity, right. Are you trying to bootstrap this? Are you looking to raise through angels? Have you guys acquired any funding through VCs? Like, because I always, we get a chance to talk with some founders, and there's so many different routes people go as far as acquiring funding and what level of, I'm trying to think of the right word here, but there's different levels of engagement from a VC to an angel as far as expectations and maybe the severity of the relationship potentially is maybe the right way of putting it. But right. How are you putting this thing together?
Yeah, so we've been lucky enough to be able to bootstrap this entire time so far. We have annual recurring contracts, and we still do software development stuff, but we've changed the way that we approach the software development. So we only do software development now for AI projects. So the reason that we still do that, A, obviously keep the lights on in addition to the annual recurring revenue that we have. B, it helps us bring on team members from outside, right? So because we want our core team to be still focused on our core product, we outsource some of the work there and bring in other team members for those projects specifically. Mm-hmm. It's always people we know really well, like it's friends of mine or friends of friends who are working at the largest Fortune 500 companies. So, super talented people that do this in their free time. And then obviously they collaborate with our core team to be able to execute things fast and have everything ready for them. But they sort of do those more edge features that need to be built out. But that allows us to have a talent pipeline too, right? So as you're doing these projects, now you have relationships with all these different developers and project managers that as you raise money or build your revenue, you can start to bring them in and obviously give them some kind of equity as well. But get them involved and it keeps them close. It keeps them familiar with the product. So it'd be really easy for them to come on and be able to start working on it. And then obviously all the learnings from that. So if you're focused on the AI software development piece, you're learning constantly about methods for tuning AI, like new RAG methods, new approaches to tools and function calling, new visibility tools, fine tuning different models, different privacy models, for example, for saving the data and re-ingesting that data depending on people's requirements. So it's sort of this, it's another one of those things where it's sort of like the HR versus healthcare piece where there will be a time where we can't do that anymore, but we're able to do it now. And it's been absolutely massively helpful for us to keep moving forward and keep learning, keep the talent pipeline there, keep the lights on. So yeah, that's been great. But to answer your equity to answer your question on the equity side, we are fundraising right now and we're in a bunch of conversations with VCs. And we would like to obviously close a round within the next few months and then, never look back. Right. So,
right. That's awesome. That's exciting. It's, in the supply chain company, it was a custom software shop that we kept doing supply chain projects. And I was just like, hey, we should probably just own the software and try to, it's like, I saw it as shooting a wedding, right? Like a wedding photographer or film person is like going from wedding to wedding, doing the same thing over and over again. Whereas if I can make a feature film, I can make it once, invest a lot into it, and then I can sell that film over and over again. And you guys are using the one to fuel the other, which is pretty cool. So I like it. I like it a lot. It's interesting.
Yeah. No, it's the pure bootstrapping model. And honestly, the way things are going right now, there's definitely a scenario where we decide we don't even want to take investment and we're just doing so well with the recurring revenue that we just don't need to.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's always a model, an option.
It gives you more power from a founder perspective as you're going through to VCs to potentially, put together convertible notes. So unless you have a future liquidation event where you raise a certain a number, you're able to pay that off with interest and take in the money and move forward as long as you have revenue. It's, sales cures all. So it's awesome. It's awesome what you're doing here. And it is cool too, because you're thinking about it from two different perspectives of, do I stay in HR or do I just go healthcare? Which I think obviously both are ridiculous size TAMs and you've got awesome opportunity there. Who knows? Maybe you just start in HR, you do that for a while, and then in 5 years you pivot, or you stay in healthcare, whatever it is, and you pivot and you include that as another product offering for what you guys are doing as you scale team and scale capability. So it's interesting.
No, and your point about the TAMs is spot on too, right? Because the three real, from product perspective, pathways that we have right now are, going through HR consultancies / targeting small and medium enterprise, which in itself is an entire market that could be won and make a massive company. Purely targeting Canadian healthcare and continuing to spread through the hospital networks here and where we have relationships already, building through there. And then if some of these deals start to go through with these US healthcare providers, even a small percentage of the US healthcare market is massive, right? So each of those three opportunities, only one really needs to work. And it's just, and it's not like we don't know where we want to go, right? Like we're actively keeping those three routes open. And once one starts to show more promise than any of the other ones, we're just going to pick that one and go, right? So it's, we're at a really, like, you guys have caught me at a really interesting point in time because we're really, like, in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, a lot's going to happen. And we're really at an inflection point right now for VEITA.
Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome. Aidan, and I think it's a great segue into like now the conclusion of our show. Aidan, what's next for you and what's next for VEITA? Obviously, long term, not necessarily counting the what's going to happen with the venture capital and so on and so forth. But or let me reframe it. Where would you like to be in the next 10, 15 years, you and your company?
Yeah, I think one way or another, all of us are building to try and exit someday, right? I think being acquired by someone would be great, or just exiting to be able to hire someone else to take my role eventually and be able to focus on other stuff would be great. It's funny, I talked to some of my friends about this too, or I have other friends who are founders, and one of the things that I would love to do someday, if I can get an exit and have some time and some money to really, think things through and figure out what my next approach is, because I'm never going to stop doing this. I love entrepreneurship. Like, it's just, I'll never retire. This is great. I love what it hurts so good, right? Like, it's really, it sucks sometimes, but it's just too fun to not keep doing. And I'm always going to do that. But I think if I could have an opportunity to exit, have some cash, take a step back, I would probably spend a lot of time trying to gather as much data on the economy and geopolitics in the world as possible. Work with some other interested people, maybe even on payroll would be awesome, right? Like, that'd be super cool. That are, data analysts and developers, and try to model out and do some predictive analytics over a bunch of different trends. I'm really personally into geopolitics. Like, I love geopolitics, and I love global events and global economy. And I always have ideas about, where to look and opportunities that are arising in different parts of the world. And it would be really cool to take a step back and be able to actually do proper analysis and see if we can figure out any insights in those different markets. So I think that would be that's like my dream,
That's awesome.
dream 10 year. If I could be doing that, I would be the happiest guy in the world. So
that's awesome. At least you have the specificity. I feel like it's hard to get to that specific thing that you want. And so to know it, a good chance you'll probably get it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm realistic too. I know that there's the chances are not in my favor, obviously, with that, but things are moving really good now. And I feel like day by day, the chances are getting better. So it's exciting times.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Aidan, firstly, well, thank you so much for your time, for your expertise. And I think that this episode for me has been very interesting because I realize how much I don't know, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And listening to people like you that have done it multiple times, that are in this stage in their business where there's so many things happening. You're at the forefront of technology. You're at the forefront of really, I would say, even I would go as far as saying maybe humanity, even in a lot of ways. So I do applaud you for that. I think that's magnificent. So I'm gonna actually do something a little bit different. I'm gonna leave it off to Patrick to give us the farewell today, since today I know he had an amazing time, because he loves talking about this stuff. Yeah. So I'm gonna hand it over to Pat. But again, Aidan, thank you so much for your time, Pat.
Hey, thank you, Rafael. I appreciate it. And no one knows anything, by the way. So
well, no. I heard a quote. I think it was by Socrates, and it said, "You can measure a man's wisdom not by what he knows, but by the questions he asks."
Yeah, exactly.
And I try to live. I'm trying to live that way.
Yeah. I feel like all my experience has done is just given me better knowledge of where I don't know things. Right?
Exactly.
You kind of start to feel where you don't know things, and that's where you got to bring in people, right? So
that's right.
That is exactly right. It's the more I learn, the less I know, which is a wild paradox, but it becomes a reality. I mean, Aidan, so much of what you said has resonated with me. I think the number is 2.7 to where you find yourself with a successful exit, and so you're on company number 2. It looks like. And so maybe you don't need the 0.7, and you're going to find yourself to the right spot. It seems like you position yourself with the right partners to get yourself to a position where you can capture success, which is so hard to grab, and it's because it's an ever-moving target. But this has been an delightful conversation, and I hope to stay connected. I'll make sure I toss over a LinkedIn request your way.
Would love to.
And we wish you the best, man. This is
awesome.
You said it reminded me of pledging my fraternity. They told me, this is the most fun you never want to have again. But I think for some reason, whenever you do startups, it's the most fun you want to keep having again, even though it's painful. So
Well, we didn't touch on it, but my background's in rowing, right? So I learned pretty quickly how to enjoy pain, enjoy discomfort, and find the bright sides of it, right? So
Right.
Yeah.
Similar experience.
So my selfish goal is hopefully this conversation, Aidan, because my selfish goal has been to get this guy to come on and work with me. So maybe this conversation finally gets him to say, okay, fine, I'll jump back into being an entrepreneur, because I've been telling him he keeps running away from it, but you can't run away that long.
Yeah, it sounds like
Yeah.
he's got the bug, so you might be
He's got it. He's got
might
it.
be winning that battle. Yeah.
Right, it's happening. I think I'm converting to the dark side pretty quickly. But so as we wrap this thing up, I'm gonna leave the floor with you, Aidan. Is there anything that you would tell people looking to jump into entrepreneurship or already in it and trying to navigate their way through it? Like, what's the best piece of advice that you can leave with people? Maybe someone told you or something that you've picked up along the way.
I'd say something that I picked up along the way is just keep your head up always, and not in the sense of like obviously don't get discouraged and but don't go too high, don't go too low ever, but also always make sure your head's up out of the water and you're looking around, right? Because it's so easy to get deep into the trenches of what's going on in your daily operations and in your daily life. Don't make sure you save the time to pop your head up, look around, look at the world outside, see what's going on, see what other opportunities, how it's moving. Take a look at geopolitics, take a look at the economy, take a look at other completely different types of technology, and you'll find inspiration in the wildest places. So keep that head up.
That's
Awesome.
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Aidan, and thank you, Raf, for keeping my head up and helping me stay connected. I appreciate it.
Yep.
We gotta do what we gotta do. All right, Aidan. Thank you so much.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
See ya.